Hare Krishna, everyone. So, we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. We'll be in continuing chapter 1, and we'll be covering text 40 today. Sorry, I'm totally unqualified to be speaking in front of you, but thank you for being here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Namaskritam
Narang Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Saraswati Vyasam
Tato Jayam Udayarayet
Jodaya Viraya
Nasta Preshma Bhadrisho
Nastabeshu Amadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttam Shloke
Bhagavate Uttamashloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Bhakti Ishtaki.
Okay, text 40. Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Samskaram Pitam Yena
Sarir Giri Vanadvihi
Sarevrivanadi
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Samacha Bhutani Vidyai
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Vive Vive Vivagasham
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Samskaram Pitam Yena
Sarir Giri Vanadvihi
Sarevrivanadi
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Samacha Bhutani Vidyai
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Vive Vive Vivagasham
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Samskaram Pitam Yena
Sarir Giri Vanadvihi
Sarevrivanadi
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Samacha Bhutani Vidyai
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Vive Vive Vivagasham
Or
Samskaram kritam yena
Bhusamskaram Pitam Yena Sarevrivanadi
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Vive Vive Vivagasham
Samstanam kritam yena
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Saragiri vanadivi
Saregiri Vanadvihi
Simacha bhutan evrityai
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Dvipe vivagasham
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Samstanam kritam yena
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Saragiri vanadivi
Sarevrivanadi
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Vive Vive Vivagasham Bhusamskaram Pitam Yena
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Sarevrivanadi
Saregiri
Simacha Bhutani Vidyai
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai
Dvipe Dvipe Vivagasham
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Samskaram kritam yena
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena
Sarukiri vanadivi
Saregiri Vanadvihi
Macha Bhuta Nirvityai
Simacha Bhuta Nirvrityai Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha
Samskaram kritam yena
Bhusangsthanam kritam yena Saregiri Vanadvihi
Simacha bhutan evrityai
Dvipe Dvipe Vibhagasha. Okay, synonyms. Bhusangsthanam, the situation of the earth.
The situation of the earth.
Kritam,
kritam
done.
done
Yena,
yena
by whom?
by whom
Sarit,
Sarit,
by rivers,
by rivers,
Giri,
Giri,
by hills and mountains,
by hills and mountains,
Vana Adabhi,
Vana Adivi,
by forests and so on.
by forests and so on.
Sima,
Sima,
boundaries.
boundaries,
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Huta,
Uta,
of different nations.
of different nations.
Nivrityaya,
Nirvijaya,
to stop fighting.
to stop fighting.
Duipe, duipe,
Dvipe, Dvipe,
on the various islands.
on the various islands.
Vibhagashaha,
Vivakasha,
separately.
separately.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Ki Jai. To stop the quarreling amongst different peoples, Maharaja Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers and at the edges of mountains and forests so that no one could trespass upon another's property. Please repeat after me. To stop the quarreling among different peoples,
To stop quarreling among different peoples.
Maharaj Priyavrata marked boundaries
Maharaja marked boundaries
at rivers and at the edges of mountains
and rivers and at the edges of mountains,
and forests so that no one would trespass
forests so that no one would trespass
upon another's property.
upon another's property.
Purport. The example set by Maharaja Priyavrata is marking off different states is still followed. As indicated here, different classes of men are destined to live in different areas, and therefore the boundaries of various tracts of land, which are described here as islands, should be defined by different rivers, forests, and hills. This is also mentioned in relation to Maharaja Prithu, who was born from the dead body of his father by the manipulation of great sages. King Vena, for those of you who are here. Maharaja Prithu's father was very sinful, and therefore a black man named Nishada was first born from his dead body. The Nishada race was given a place in the forest because by nature they are thieves and rogues. As animals are given places in various forests and hills, men who are like animals are also destined to live there. One cannot be promoted to civilized life unless one comes to Krishna consciousness. For by nature, one is destined to live in a particular situation according to one's karma and association with the modes of nature. If men want to live in harmony and peace, they must take to Krishna consciousness, for they cannot achieve the highest standard while absorbed in the bodily concept of life. Maharaja Priyavrata divided the surface of the globe into different islands so that each class of men would live peacefully and not clash with others. The modern ideal of nationhood has gradually developed from the divisions made by Maharaja Priyavrata. Gyanamuttamaranthasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmritam Yena Tasman Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadah Mayam Darati Swaparantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandha Jagatpate Gopish Shagopaka Kanta Rakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudadevi Pranamami Hare Priye Panchakalpatru Vishta Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesh Shonivari Pashakti Reshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare So, today's text one more time. To stop the quarreling among different peoples, Maharaja Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers, at the edges of mountains and forests, so that no one would trespass upon another's property. So, as described, different grades of people were separated to prevent disharmony amongst each other. As Prabhupada states here in the purport, the Naishadha race was given a place in the forest because by nature they are thieves and rogues. As animals are given places in various forests and hills, men who are like animals are also destined to live there. So, according to the gunas or the modes that one associates with, he's going to have a certain qualities and a way of being, how he carries himself. As described in the Bhagavad Gita, in each mode it talks about the types of activities, like for example, ignorance, they're full of sleep and things like that. So people associating with certain gunas may not get along so well with people in or associating with a different set of gunas. For example, someone in the mode of ignorance may be envious of someone in the mode of goodness due to them having more of a sense of happiness in their life, and things are they're probably in a lot better situation of life. So they may get envious of that. And sometimes we see when um, people not so well off see someone better well off, they may do something to hamper that happiness or whatever that may be, whether that's bullying someone, beating up someone, robbing someone, and so on, due to this envy. So, similarly, those associating in similar modes will naturally get along better. As the saying goes, show me who your friends are, and I'll show you who you are, because we associate with like minded people, generally speaking, at least closely associating with like minded people. So, naturally, uh, we group ourselves off like that. We associate with those who we feel more in tune with, and we don't associate so much with others. And so Maja Priyavrata, in order to not have this harmony throughout the world, he created this separation um, between people to prevent that disharmony. So following this, Prabhupada also states in the purport that one cannot be promoted to civilized life unless one comes to Krishna consciousness. For by nature, one is destined to live in a particular situation according to one's karma and association with the modes of nature. So we see that based off of one's karma and the gunas that they associate and have adapted to be like, um, people take on different situations, different species, different genders, different family situations. They have different attractions, different locations, and so on, due to their karma and their guna, the modes of nature. So when we take on these designations, one accepts and acts according to that. So, like the famous example given, hogs and dogs oftentimes are happy eating their own stool or another's stool for that matter. And they find enjoyment in this, in which you may not find other species enjoying eating their own stool like a dog or a hog. And One born in an abusive household often acts and thinks differently than those born in an affectionate household. So it's not necessarily that we choose these things, um, but due to our guna and our karma, we accept these things and we act according to that. We are put into this lifestyle and often find satisfaction with that despite the circumstances. So recently, in my reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, I came across these two verses in the third canto in the 30th chapter, which Lord Kapila says that the living entity in whatever species of life he appears finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species, and he is never averse to being situated in such a condition. The conditioned living entity is satisfied in its own particular species of life, while deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy. He feels little inclined to cast off his body, even when in hell, for he takes delight in hellish enjoyment. So, in whatever body we end up accepting, oftentimes we find some type of enjoyment, even though it's not really enjoyment. And a good example of this was King Indra. We talk about this frequently in classes, but King Indra was once cursed to take on a hog's body. And eventually, I want to say, if I remember correctly, Lord Brahma came to convince him to come back, like, hey, we need you. And, hog isn't the best of life. It eats its own stool. It can't sweat, so it rolls in mud and it mates with its own family members and so many other things. It's not the best of conditions of life. However, King Indra, the king of heaven, we're talking about, it's a pretty high standard. Most of us aren't even qualified. Well, maybe some of us, but most of us aren't even qualified to be in such a position to be king of heaven like that. And here, the king of heaven is finding happiness with his hog wife, his hog kids, and eating his own stool and things like that. And he doesn't want to leave his body. So we see this even in this life. People are attached to their enjoyment. They may be alcoholics, drug addicts, horrible family due to their decisions, horrible living situation due to their decisions, but they don't want to give it up and they don't think that they're really suffering. They think they're enjoying their best life. Prabhupada then goes on to say that if men want to live in harmony and peace, they must take to Krishna consciousness, for they cannot achieve the highest standard while absorbed in the bodily concept of life. So the point is made that we cannot live in harmony, we cannot live in peace, and we cannot have happiness when we're absorbed in this bodily concept of life. That's the basics. When we're trapped in this concept. So when I am trapped and I'm absorbed in this idea, I think that I am my body. And by thinking that I'm my body, that means that my sense of happiness, my sense of peace, all this is based off sense perception. For example, just like not even a crazy example, when it's just a little hotter or a little colder than someone likes or prefers to be in, they start to become unhappy. Some people even get angry about it. Some people may yell at you to turn up the heat or, cool it down. It's too hot in here. It's too cold in here. They're not happy. It doesn't even have to be crazy heat or crazy cold. Just a little bit more than they're comfortable with. And it creates this dissatisfaction. So this bodily concept absorption also means that I see others as a body, which often leads to exploitation and prejudice of others. So oftentimes we see that people exploit women to enjoy with, or they exploit animals to be able to eat, or they're prejudiced towards other races and ethnicities and treat them differently accordingly. So, therefore, in order to live in this true happiness and this true peace, we have to come to Krishna consciousness. There's no other um, way of getting to this point. Because when we take the Krishna consciousness, we learn to see beyond the body. We learn to see the traps of the gunas. You know, it gives a description of what the gunas are like. And we also learn how to raise above and beyond these modes of nature which control us. And we also learn how to cooperate with one another and different types of people in Krishna consciousness for Krishna's pleasure. So we see in the Krishna consciousness movement, people are coming from all kinds of backgrounds. Some people were super rich and living a very opulent life, some very poor, some coming from this country, some coming from that country, some from this culture or that culture, some from this religion or that religion. We see all these different types of people which otherwise may not necessarily get along with one another in normal circumstances. But in Krishna consciousness, we're seeing beyond this body, and we know that we're all parts and parcels of Krishna, and that our goal is to please Him. And the best way to be able to please Him is to please Him with one another and to bring other people to please Him. Because Krishna is trying so hard to get everybody back. And, you know, we're social beings. We want association. We seek association. People that are alone oftentimes go crazy. One of the worst things in prison for a person is when they're put in a solitary. Many people, when they're in there for an extended long period, they start to go crazy. So we need this association. So we learn how to cooperate with one another. And we bring other people in to please Krishna. Krishna wants more and more people to come towards Him. And He gives us that mission. He could do it all Himself. But He gives us that glory to be able to do. He gives the glory to His devotees. So in His pleasure is our greatest happiness and our truest happiness. Because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, which means that we have a loving and reciprocal relationship with Him. So when we please Krishna, naturally He wants to please us too. This is how love works. If I love you, I want to serve you. I want to make you happy. You know, I learn about you. I learn what you like, and I try to do things which I know will bring you great pleasure. And if you love me, naturally, you're going to want to do the same. And it's not that at first, maybe it's this way, but later on, it's not that we want anything in return. Because true love is doing everything for their pleasure without any sense of, I'm going to get something back. Because that's when it becomes more of a business, it's more of a transaction. But love, it doesn't require that transaction. It requires that I simply want to see you happy. I simply want to do what I can for you. Closest thing we see in this material world is often between a good mother and her child. You know, a child may do so many things. A child may poop in her lap, but the mother is not mad at this. The mother's like, okay. The child may grow up and may start saying mean words. The mother tolerates this. Child may end up making mistakes in which many people start hating that child but the mother still loves this child. Krishna's love is much greater than this love. He goes above and beyond that. So this Krishna consciousness is how we achieve peace and happiness, for which we search and endeavor for. This is everybody's mission in life, is they're searching for happiness and peace. They don't want to be distressed. Nobody wants to be distressed. And they're trying to find ways and make situations in which they think they will not be distressed and they'll have happiness. So maybe that means I work hard hours so I can buy a nice house. I could buy a nice car. I can maintain a wife, maybe two, maybe three, who knows? Or I can have multiple children, or I can afford the food that I want to eat. Like so many things they're working for, but in this endeavor, you know, they lose their job, their wife leaves them, their children die. So many different things which causes more distress because this isn't the supreme thing, this isn't permanent. None of these situations we're trying to create for ourselves are permanent. So the happiness due to that is also not going to be permanent. It may give us happiness for a bit of time, but the happiness will fade at some point. So it's as simple as understanding the peace formula, which Prabhupada talks about from Bhagavad Gita 529. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam yatva mang shantim rechati. Krishna says that a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material existence. So there's three main points of realization within this verse. One is that Krishna is the supreme beneficiary. He's the ultimate beneficiary, meaning that all human activities are for him, ultimately. Even in one sense speaking, even when we're in Maya, we're still serving his devotee. But even more so when we become Krishna consciousness, when we come to Krishna conscious state and serve. But all human activities are meant for the Lord. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that all acts of sacrifice are ultimately for him. So even when you give to the demigods your sacrifice, he says that you're worshiping him, but in an indirect way. So this is foolish because ultimately it's going to him anyway, but you're taking this long route when you could just directly serve him. So he's the ultimate beneficiary. Second thing is he's the ultimate proprietor. Says that he is the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. So he's even greater than the demigods, which are controlling this material nature, that are bringing about the sun, bringing about the rains, giving us this earth to walk on, and so much more. He's above and in control of all of that. So it starts to put us in more of a humble state, because it starts to destroy our false ego and sense of proprietorship, because he's the owner of this and he's greater than all of us. So one, he's the ultimate beneficiary. Two, he's the supreme proprietor. And three, he's the greatest friend. Realizing that God is the well-wishing friend of every living entity, and that he wants what's best for us. This word suhritam, which we translate as friend, has a hridam in it, meaning the heart. Ito Nrsimha, Parato Nrsimha, Toyami, Tato Nrsimha. Bahir Nrsimha, outside is the Lord Nrsimha. Bahir Nrsimha, Hridaye Nrsimha, and Nrsimha is within the heart. This Hrida, this Hrid. So it has to do with the heart, which means that it's something intimate. It's an affectionate relationship, something deep. It's not just like a normal relationship with you have with just anybody. It's a deep relationship, an affectionate relationship. So we must come to this understanding, and it's not so easy for many of us to understand because this kind of understanding requires a sense of humility and a sense of surrender. However, even though Krishna practically demands us to surrender, um, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful that he's begging us, which is kind of crazy to think that Lord comes to beg from us, but he's basically begging at our feet to please chant his names. You know, we may not understand so much on the practical level, and by our efforts alone, we can't achieve anything. It requires the mercy of Krishna. All our efforts are useless without his mercy. You know, I may endeavor to do so many things. I may endeavor to get a big house. I may endeavor to make someone happy. I may endeavor to cook something opulent. But without his mercy, at any point, uh, we cannot do so. He's the one that's controlling everything. He's the supreme controller. He's the one within the heart that's directing us. He's the one giving us knowledge and remembrance. He's also forgetfulness. So if you're not after the mercy, he could also make you forget as well, if that's what you do so choose. So we require the mercy. So this chanting of the holy names of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is like begging for that mercy so that we may be able to reawaken our natural state, where we can understand and act on this loving relationship that we have with him. Mahaprabhu is so merciful that 540 years ago, he came to give us this process of chanting and to beg us to chant, disregarding all our qualifications. You know, other mantras, you had to be qualified at some point. Like Gayatri mantras, you had to be initiated by your guru into that. I could try to chant the Brahma Gayatri or any other Gayatri mantra, but it's all useless unless my guru, who got it from his guru, got it from his guru, is initiated into it. Unless I'm given that mantra, it's useless. And other mantras, you know, you can't say it in certain places. You have to have a certain level of cleanliness. It has so many things that you have to have. But this Maha Mantra is being given to everyone, no matter what race, ethnicity, your religion. It's for everyone. Even the lowest of low drunkard, drug addict on the street, even the people in prison that have done all kinds of sinful activities. It's for everyone. Even Nityananda Prabhu was so merciful to give and beg at the point of being smashed in the head with a jar, the Jaga and Madhai, to please chant these names. This is the mercy of Gauranga to us. So much so that the Lord himself is coming to beg at our feet, even if we don't want him, even if we disrespect him, he's coming at our feet to beg us to chant these names. Because Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Vakevam, Kalau Nosteva, Nosteva, Kotiranyatha. In this age of quote hypocrisy, Kali Yuga, there's no other means of deliverance. There's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way. I say this frequently, but it's often a good reminder that this is chanted 3 times for a couple different reasons, and probably more than I know. One is that things in scripture are repeated and emphasized to tell us the importance of it. So it's important to know that there's no other way. But also it's described that it's repeated 3 times to remind us that jnana, or empirical knowledge, speculative knowledge, is not going to deliver us. This karma, or doing certain activities for results, is not going to deliver us. This yoga and this mystic yoga, getting these siddhis, so many people think this is spirituality, I learned how to levitate, I learned how to make myself small, I learned how to do all these different circus acts, and that's spiritual, that makes me delivered. No, it's not going to deliver you, especially in Kali Yuga, for which most of these things require, again, high qualifications. Jnana yoga practically means that you had to take sannyas for all intents and purposes. You got to be pretty renounced to be able to really, really achieve anything in that path. Karma, doing like karma kanda and things like that, gotta have so much things to offer, and so much which we can't even afford or have access to. And you gotta have the mantra said perfectly. So to be able to do this is very difficult and pretty futile. And mystic yoga, this yoga process, even just doing something as simple as dhyana or meditation, which was given in Sati Yoga, most of the time, for most people, it took at least 60,000 years to be able to achieve anything. And even then, just 1,000 years is a lot for us, because we don't live that long. And do you really want to take birth over and over again just to finally achieve enlightenment through meditation? When all you had to do is Hare Nama. All you had to do is chant the names of the Lord. It's as simple as that. You could be working in the world. You could have a family, or you could be renounced. Whatever case, whatever situation you find yourself in, you just chant these names, and you will reawaken that love of God simply by chanting these names. So it's higher than all these other processes. It's the easiest process, and we don't need to overcomplicate it. Prabhupada taught us in such a way that everyone can do this chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dancing, chanting, taking prasadam, and of course also doing things like reading and all the other things with this. Super simple. We all got to eat. Why not eat prasadam? We all got to hear. Why not listen to Krishna Katha? We all want to say or speak about something, so why not chant? Why not speak about Krishna? Why not speak about our dear friend, our Suhridam? And we all have to read something. If you're not reading a book, you're reading text messages, or you're reading random articles online or Instagram or whatever it is. If you're literate, you're reading something. Why not read these books? We got so many. Prabhupada spent so much time translating these in his 70s with very minimal sleep, while opening up so many temples, taking care of so many devotees, but still making time to translate these books so that we can read them. So many books we have. And so we should take this process, the simplest process that we're given in Kali Yuga. So in this way, our lives will become perfect, even if it doesn't look like it from the external point of materialists. You know, we could be very poor, we could be sick, we can be in not the best of circumstances materially, but we can still find ourselves happy in Krishna consciousness. Because we get to serve the Supreme Lord, the controller of everything, the greatest friend of all, the greatest lover of all. Even if it's as simple as chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hearing Krishna Katha, or remembering him. It doesn't take a whole lot to have this relationship with Krishna. Even if you just do Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, the very first 3 processes mentioned in the 9 processes of Bhakti Yoga, everyone could do one of these things, even at least remembering Krishna at the minimum. Everyone could at least take prasadam. So we can find ourselves happy no matter the situations or conditions that we find ourselves in. You know, so many people we see, they always are complaining about their lives. This is like the kata of a materialist. They're always complaining about their lives and how they're going to overcome it. I mean, if you go to some of these gatherings or different places, like the gym, for example, because I've been in the sauna, you hear about, oh, what's your workout routine? Or you hear about, plans on getting rich. Oh yeah, I heard about this way to get rich, that way to get rich. Oh, have you watched this video from this personality? Or, you know, in family especially and with friends. Oh man, this happened in my life. So and so did this, so and so did that. Woe be me. We hear all this nonsense, but you know, oftentimes, what are you really able to do about it? Especially when it comes to other people and their lives, their own individual lives. We get so wrapped up in that, which can be good if we're trying to give them Krishna consciousness, but if we're getting wrapped up in something that's above our pay grade and something we can't do, like, you're just wasting your time. You're wasting this valuable human life. Every second you're dying. And you're wasting this time getting involved in all these different situations and talking about all these things. When you look at a devotee, you know, he could be paralyzed, he could be severely sick, he could be super poor, he could be the most hated person in material society, but yet you find that he still finds happiness in his Krishna consciousness. He's tasting something so supreme, even though materialistically he's really going through it. And oftentimes we really don't want to be that person. But he's above this bodily conception of life. He's living in a direct relationship with Krishna. And it's the most pleasing. So no matter where we find ourselves, no matter the situation, condition, whatever it is, we'll be the most pleased. We'll have the most pleasure. And that's not our goal. You know, we're not after that. That's a side effect. Our goal is to please Krishna because he's our lover, he's our friend, and we've forgotten that relationship. And he keeps coming, trying to remind us of our relationship, just like, you know, maybe we had a nice friend back when we were growing up and we were the best of friends. And as life goes on, we get separated, but you know, that friend tries to come back in our life like, hey, you remember when we used to do this? You remember when we used to do that? Krishna's like that friend. And you won't ever be displeased with him. Even when you're put through certain difficulties, you see the reason that you're being put through it. because you know that Krishna is not putting me through this for nothing. You know, this is either due to my own actions, or and it could be a combination of both, or it's bringing me into a deeper realization and deeper love with Krishna. Whatever the case may be, everything is bringing us to that point of loving Krishna and having that relationship once again. Anyways, I think it's about time, so we'll stop here for questions or comments. Kirtaneshwar Prabhu.
Good class, right? Myself a Radhanath Swami vibe. Yeah, me too. So I was thinking, very nice class. One comment, one question is in regards to your, stating how the holy name is so powerful. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam where it says that whether one who's chanting the holy name, they've done all of the other activities, all the sacred baths, all of the austerities, all the fire yajnas, all of the good behavior of the Aryan people is in one who's chanting the holy name. Aho bata swa pachato garyan yajjiva gray vartate namatubhyam tepus tupaste juhuvu shashnur arya. All tepus tapaste shashnur arya. All of that's done. Ramanatur nama grinati yete, for one who's chanting Hare Krishna. So it's actually chanting Hare Krishna is so much beyond anything else. My question is that, well, actually one more comment, that this is saying that, to stop the quarreling amongst different peoples, Maharaj Privrata marked boundaries at rivers. So we're having a world now where, not to get political, but there's a lot of debate about borders and so forth. And it seems that the Bhagavatam is in favor of borders. And just to point that out, Prabhupada said there's no borders for the devotees, but borders are seemingly important in the sense that separating people because of different modes of nature. But the question is that if someone has a certain karma, we're born in the mode of ignorance and we're living ignorantly, is it our karma that we become a devotee? Is there some destiny in regards to becoming a devotee? And even if someone's karma is very ignorant, full of darkness, and they become a devotee, do they just become a devotee that still experiences all that pain and the ignorance, or their karma, or is it just completely change? Because usually devotee astrologers say that even though someone's a devotee, they can still see astrologically, still usually the things happen to them, but it happens in a different way. Which is interesting because, you mentioned the verse from the Bhagavad Gita that we're born a certain way, and if someone becomes a devotee, they can transcend that. But still, how does it work on us then? Or is it just we're just like liberated from it? It's just a question.
So I'm not the most qualified, and Krishna knows better than I, and of course, other devotees. But Prabhupada mentions in one purport, I want to say, and maybe in the first canto, that when a person is in the material state of life, in material consciousness, that he is under Maya's control. So everything that's happening to him is under her jurisdiction and under the demigods doing so. But when one becomes a devotee, one becomes under Krishna's jurisdiction. And so, whereas Maya is just whipping you nonsensically until you finally get your act right, Krishna has it planned out in such a way that it improves your spiritual life and your Krishna consciousness. So seemingly we see that devotees go through really bad things, and one may think like, oh, you must have done a lot of sinful activities, and in one sense that could be true to some extent, but in another sense Krishna's playing it out in such a way that it's his it's to upgrade his spiritual life. It's to raise him up from where he is. So whereas Maya is just whooping you down, covering and dragging you, Krishna is spanking you and lifting you up higher. I don't know if that quite answers your question. Maybe someone else can answer you a bit better in that part.
That's the standard answer we hear. That's the standard answer we hear. I'm pretty sure. Basically, I would say that's a good, correct answer. I mean, I always wonder about devotees like Vitrasura, or, especially Vitrasura, because he was like totally demoned out. But at the same time, he was always acting like a demon, but he was still remembering Krishna inside. So sometimes we find that even someone who may be even apparently demoniac, or like Bhishma, he was also fighting against Krishna, yet he was pure devotee. So the circumstance may have it that a devotee may appear in a really demoniac situation, but because of the modes of nature they've acquired, because he did make that offense to Parvati, and he was cursed. Of course, he didn't challenge it because he knew he'd still remember Krishna. Or even the deer, Bharat Maharaj became a deer, yet he was still remembering Krishna, so he was a transcendental deer, so to speak. Maybe Sufi's a transcendental turkey. No, he's not.
He's prasadam.
He's prasadam. He becoming after 7 years, his whole body will be made of prasadam. It's just one of those interesting points that as a devotee, we may see that some devotees like, oh, they're, acting crazy, or they're not, they're not living like so sattvically, but they still may have immense devotion to Krishna. And it's an interesting point that, we can look at other religions too. Like, I was speaking to some people at a gathering the other night, and they were all Indian, and they became very critical of Catholic people without knowing it. I said, why don't you stick to your Bhagavad Gita? So you don't know what you're talking about. So there are many great saints in the Catholic Church, transcendental personalities, but they're born in a certain mode. But the devotion to God was so, was there. And so in that way, they were able to apparently transcend it.
Definitely good points. I think it's always important that we remember that when we enter into Krishna's world, things become inconceivable. We can't explain everything. Krishna's mercy and his devotees are pretty inconceivable. Nityananda Prabhu did things that, if we see anybody else do it, it's like, that's a crazy man, like, if we acted like that, people would be like, hey, Prabhu, like, that's not being Krishna conscious. You're totally in Maya. Or we see other devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita and such things, where they act in a different way. But it's important to remember that we can't necessarily conceive one's relationship with the Lord. We don't know necessarily where they're at with the Lord. Out externally, it may look one way, but internally, that relationship between Krishna and that living entity is so personal and confidential that we can't necessarily understand that. Lily, did you have something with that or to ask?
It's different. I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
different. So how do we reconcile, we're taught like we're not our body, we're taught that, we should see others on a spiritual platform, but yet repeatedly over and over again, there's multiple, things in our scriptures and in Prabhupada's purports that are seeing people on the bodily platform, right? Like the Nishada race is rogues and thieves. Women are less intelligent. And then this attitude carries over to devotees, right? Even though there's supposed to be no spiritual impediment, there is impediments put in place because of people's bodily designations. And so how do we reconcile this? Because I'm really struggling lately. I find that a lot of devotees are very judgmental, and they are, literally trying to prevent people from doing service because of their bodily designations. And so it just seems like there's a big disconnect there. And so how are we supposed to make sense of this?
It's a good question, heavy third topic, definitely above me, but I'll speak of what I can speak about on that. It's important to remember that a lot of times in the scripture, when it mentions these things, it's talking more, how do I want to word this? 'Cause I don't want to say it in a wrong way. But it's more a generalization and something like, most of the time this species, like a hog, will eat their own stool and all that, but doesn't mean that all hogs necessarily do. You may find some that don't. It's more, in one sense, a generalization so we can understand and navigate through this world. And also when we find ourselves in those designations, we know how to come out of it. However, when one gets to the spiritual platform, especially when they're on a higher platform, they're above this. Like when we look at Shukadev, he walks by, he's naked, first of all, and he walks by young women that are bathing, and they don't even cover themselves because they know he's above that, and he's not thinking anything about them. But when his father Vyasadeva, who is a householder, walks by, immediately they cover themselves, even though he's Supreme Personality of Godhead and all that. Still, they cover themselves up, and this is because when interacting and to navigate through this world, oftentimes we have to properly act in our designations. However, unfortunately, some people overly take this to the point that it becomes a material thing. It's not so much about navigating through the world and acting in such a way properly, but it becomes a point of judging other people based on their body and preventing them, even if it comes to race, not even just gender, but even just race. You may see some so-called spiritual people judge other people based off of not being from the same race, whether that's like in Judaism or like even in Krishna consciousness. Some Indians, when they see a non-Indian join and all that, it's like, well, this mlecha doesn't know what he's talking about.
Saying that on one of our Facebook pages, on a post I made of Gurudev, and they were saying, well, what's his Varna? Who is this guy? I mean, it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous.
It's to the forefront of knowledge. I think Ketaneshwar has something probably a lot better and maybe a correction to what I just mentioned.
And what you said is correct about, but generalization is an interesting word. Prabhupada speaks on all these different levels. Prabhupada is speaking on a variety of levels. And Bhagavatam's a cultural presentation, introductions, cultural presentation. So culturally, there's certain things that have to be done. And Prabhupada, originally, when he came to America, he said, we don't need Varnashram. Chanting Hare Krishna will solve all the problems. But by the end of his life, he was saying, my only regret is I didn't establish Varnashram, because he realized that people are not coming to the transcendental platform so easily. So therefore, Varnashram's a way in which one can rise. But besides that, more importantly than all of that, is on an individual level that we understand that there's no bar for our own development of spiritual life. When we start getting an institutional consciousness where I can't serve because the institutional challenges, that is a limit on ourselves, because we're identifying with a material element of a spiritual institution. We have all facility, every living entity, especially every human form of life, has every facility to go back to Godhead by chanting Hare Krishna nicely, by reading nicely, by following the process nicely, and by telling others. No one is stopping anybody from going out and giving books. No one is stopping anybody from going out and doing any of these things. Even if you didn't live at a temple, whatever you are, wherever you're at, you can open up your home. You can do so much in Krishna's service. That's Krishna's service, and that's Prabhupada's service, and Prabhupada accepts that. And that's our own individual spiritual life that we have to get from reading and from chanting. And that is completely transcendental. Our karma and our government, our institution, which is not perfect, because it's run by people who are not on that level of Srila Prabhupada, it's going to have imperfections. It's going to have challenges. It's going to have these things, but there's nothing stopping our individual advancement except us, because that's our hearing and our chanting and our doing everything we can according to our abilities, which are limited by our own karma. And we use our intelligence, our body, our mind, doing everything we can to serve Krishna, then we'll feel the ecstasy. And when you feel the ecstasy, all this stuff doesn't matter.
So when we see other devotees being hurt by these behaviors, it's really hard to just say, oh, well, my own personal progress is not impeded. When I see other devotees that are nice devotees, and then they're not being allowed to serve.
We have to also explain that to them. We have to also encourage them in what actually, we have to give them the real essence of Krishna consciousness, and not, because I've seen before, we've seen it here, that, devotees get absorbed in this political thing. They've never even met a GBC. They've never even been out of this Tucson temple. They become so absorbed in things that are happening in the big bad world of ISKCON that they leave Krishna consciousness without actually realizing that it had nothing to do with them. And so, Radhanath Maharaj was asked, what about these issues? What do you think of these issues? And Radhanath Swami's answer was really good. He said, I don't think of them. I don't think of them. I think about Krishna. And, I think that's a big trap of Maya. And I'm seeing it, especially very prominently in my life right now, devotees focusing in so much on that which is not, that has no apparent meaning whatsoever to any of our actual Krishna consciousness, that come together and do some kirtan, go out and distribute some books, call people out and start preaching to them. And that's the thing, the institution's going to always have challenges and could limit people's ability to serve. It could enhance some people's ability to serve. For instance, I moved in the temple to preach. That's why I wanted to move in the temple. It enhanced my ability to serve. But sometimes living in the temple could inhibit an ability to serve. That's just a fact. It's not that there's anything wrong with the temple itself, which is a place where people worship God, and we can go for community, which is what it's mainly about, the community. But it could inhibit service. So you have to, find senior guidance and take it and have loving relationships and go beyond that type of thing. And Prabhupada is speaking about all this stuff because societies do have these challenges. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be able to, we have to be able to have intelligent brahmanas who can understand what is basically a detail and what is a principle. And that's why, my observation is that when you look at Back to Godhead 1966, we're all going back to Godhead because we're chanting Hare Krishna and we're spreading Krishna consciousness. And now, it seems like each, progressive years, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to go back to Godhead. There's all these more things you have to do. 4 regular principles, 16 rounds, chant, be happy. We got Prabhupada's mercy. That's my take on it, but it's an opinion more than facts. That's how I've rationalized any of these things.
Those are a lot of great points for one to consider. Thank you so much for adding that on. All right, well, it's past time, so we'll end here. If there's any other comments or anything, or discussion, we'll do that at breakfast. Anyways, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
In the class.
I know, I was surprised you